magnetic composite structure solid rocket booster in the world. Then we have a second and third stage, which are called the Zefiro stages, with 23 tons and 11 tons for the third stage. And the fourth stage is an Avons based on liquid propulsion, which hosts all the avionics of the launcher. And we end up with fairing, which hosts the payload.
The launcher is integrated within a mobile gantry, and this mobile gantry is then moved 80 meters aside before liftoff. This is the same principle which was used for Ariane 1, 2, and 3. Vega will launch from the same spot where these Arianes lifted off during the first decade of Europe's flights from the French Guiana base between 1979 and 1989. The historic launch pad has been rebuilt specially for the new Vega vehicle. Coming up on 6 minutes to go before this historic first launch of Vega, you saw Mr. Bianchi and Mr. Fabrizi there. We gave you a quick first look at the launcher. Now for a look inside the fairing to see how the satellites are carried for their mission or missions. There are 9 passengers, a rather complex mission for a qualification flight. We'll be back with some facts on that. The primary payload is LARES. The secondary, and secondary only in the sense that they're separated in second position. Secondary passengers are ALMASat 1 and the 7 CubeSats. LARES will be separated first. It's both the upper passenger and the heaviest at 400 kilos. ALMASat weighs in at 12.5 kilos, and each of the 7 CubeSats 1 kilo each. You've seen the launcher and the satellites. For a more detailed look on Vega's first mission, we turn to Michel Debrenne of Arianespace.
This is the qualification flight, so it's our first launch. We will be qualifying the entire Vega system, the launch vehicle, the ground segment, and also the payload transportation system. 9 satellites are to be launched, LARES, ALMASat, 7 CubeSats. What is more, because of the specific trajectory, we need to have 7 tracking stations. So on the ground side too, it's a complicated campaign. 9 payloads on the maiden flight. This launch will be very fast. The first stage has a thrust of 300 tons. Burn phase will last around 2 minutes. Then comes the 23-ton second stage with its 120-ton thrust for 1 minute, followed by the 10-ton third stage with a 30-ton thrust. So you can see how rapid the burn phase is for the first 3 solid stages, about 6 minutes. After this we move into a more tranquil phase with the liquid stager AVUM. LARES will be separated about 1 hour after 55 minutes. Then a minor deorbit maneuver will allow it to lower the orbit and jettison the next passengers, ALMASat and the CubeSats, into that lower orbit.
You're hearing the DDO about to call out the 4-minute mark.
Top. H0 moins 4 minutes.
The 4-minute mark tonight is the beginning of what's called the synchronized or automatic sequence. You heard Michel Debrenne just a moment ago in the film say the initial powered flight sequence of Vega's first 3 stages occurs rather rapidly in roughly 5 minutes. Ariane 5 sequence is longer, if you're familiar with that. Also, unlike Ariane, Vega has a short automatic or synchronized sequence. Ariane's, you might remember, is usually 7 minutes. Tonight, 4 minutes. The DDO, or Range Operations Manager today, Aimée Sip, the first female DDO we've ever had. This is her second mission. Her first was last September on Ariane's flight number 204. The 4-minute mark, which she called out, is the beginning of a complex series of operations running right down to liftoff, gradually letting the launcher become autonomous as power passes from the ground to the onboard computers, which will control everything afterward. Our cameras are here in Jupiter, the Mission Control Center, but a lot of people are at work at a lot of different places across this big space base, and you're looking at one of them now. This is the CDLV, the Launch Operations Center for Vega, where the Launch Operations Manager and his teams are right now. That's Davide on the right there. He's down there. They are much closer to the launch pad than we are here in Jupiter. The COEL leads about 100 people who are at this moment going over the final checks and verifications on all parts of Vega's launch system, piloting things until liftoff. And then Vega is on her own. You're watching the inaugural flight of Vega from Europe's Spaceport. You can follow it all on the ESA website on ESA TV. There is the helicopter shot, because on the qualification flights, as Davide was saying earlier, we have a lot of cameras because we want to look at everything. And we need good visibility today because we got cameras on board also. We should have some fine shots all around in just under 2 minutes. Last October, you remember, we had the inaugural flight of Soyuz, and we're continuing with this series of firsts as the launcher family working out of the French Guiana Space Base. Europe's Spaceport continues to grow. Shot of the fairing there, you see the logos on the outside, LARES and the other satellites, and Vega, the sun beginning to make its appearance here. A big moment for European space. After 1979, Ariane 1, and 1996, Ariane 5, 2012, this year, the year of Vega. The first entirely new launcher to fly from the space base in over a decade, and a lot of emotion across the space base, as you can imagine.
À tous de DDO, attention pour moins 1 minute.
DDO is going to call out the 1 minute mark.
Top. H0 moins 1 minute.
We are into the final 60 seconds. Before Vega's maiden launch, the VIPs and the invited guests here in Jupiter are beginning to make their way out on the 2 terraces on either side. There's a wonderful view of the launch pad from here. Countdown proceeding smoothly. Excitement here has been high all week. It's another one of those moments right now as all eyes on the computer screens and all ears at the telephones as we approach liftoff. We're going to cut away and let you hear the DDO. She'll call out the final countdown numbers. Enjoy the launch. We'll be back after Vega has cleared the tower.
À tous de DDO, attention pour le décompte final. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, top. Allumage premier étage. Décollage. La trajectoire est normale.
Boy, did she go up in a hurry. Did you see that? Vega lifting off like a streak from the pad here, unlike Ariane 5, which takes her time. The DDO is saying everything is normal up there. 137 tons at liftoff. Ariane 5 weighs over 6 times that much. But these are pictures that are going to go around the world, the maiden voyage. Vega's first 3 stages rising rapidly, and boy, you saw that in 5 minutes. The first stage will separate in about 30 seconds.
La propulsion du premier étage est normale.
Propulsion is normal. The second stage will separate in about 3.5 minutes. The third stage ignites shortly thereafter, and the third stage separates in about just under 6 minutes. We're doing fine up there. Take a look at the left-hand side of your screen. On the upper left, the cursor crawling up the curve. There are actually 2 lines. There's the optimal trajectory and the real-time trajectory, as long as one is superimposed on the other. We're right where we should be. On the lower left, the 2 lines, A is the altitude, climbing up to 57 kilometers, V, velocity, our speed, 174.
Séparation du premier étage.
There's a separation of the first stage.
Allumage du deuxième étage.
Right on time, and the ignition of the second stage. First stage burned perfectly, jettisoned at about 61 kilometers up. The motor called the P80 FW. P80 produced in Colleferro near Rome. We'll have a film on that
La trajectoire est normale.
coming up. Everything is fine on board, the P80, the first stage, has something new. The thrust vector control system is using electromechanical actuation for the first time ever on a launcher's first stage instead of a hydraulic system. The actuator is a bar that controls the first stage nozzle orienting the thrust upon command from the computer, onboard computer, sort of like the steering wheel.
La trajectoire est normale.
The advantages is it's lighter, easier to integrate, and cheaper. A world first for a motor of that size. We're in the second stage burn. Weighs 25 tons, 23 are fuel. Both the Zefiro stages, the third and the second stage, produced by Avio. They're loaded with solid propellant before being shipped here to the spaceport. Not very different than what's done for Ariane 5. Both stages, based on a Zefiro solid propellant motors already developed by Avio. There's the separation of the second stage. Our speed now 3.8 kilometers per second, as you can see on the left. We are right where we should be. Third stage, 4 meters long. It's Vega's smallest solid propellant motor, but it has the longest burn time. The longest burn time, over 2 minutes. Weighs 12 tons, 10 are fuel. We're approaching the fairing jettison. You'll see the two halves of the fairing, there they are, right on time, being separated, revealing to the elements, the satellites. Fairing protects, of course, the payload from the shocks during Vega's ascent through the atmosphere, and once we leave the Earth's atmosphere, we don't need the fairing anymore. There's LARES. You see the ball with the mirrors right in the middle.
La trajectoire est normale.
The black and blue box on the left is AlmaSat, and the other CubeSats around it on the platform.
Acquisition de la télémesure lanceur par la station navale Ariane.
DDO has just called out, we've been picked up by our first downrange tracking station. That's on a boat out in the Atlantic. We'll have a film telling us all about the new facilities, including the new tracking stations that have come to the base because of Vega.
Le pilotage est calme.
See, we're burning the third stage, and on top of the third stage is the AVUM. That's the fourth stage. That's just under the fairing platform there. Altitude 166, speed 6.25 kilometers per second. We're coming upon separation of the third stage. The Vega base designed to handle 4 launches a year.
Le pilotage est calme.
Eventually. The Vega Launch Control Center, which you saw earlier, in the same building that houses the Ariane 5 Control Center. Mission control is provided from the same Jupiter building where we are tonight. That's used for Ariane and Soyuz launches. Everything functioning flawlessly on board Vega as we're approaching third stage separation. And we'll have ignition of the AVUM. The trajectory is normal, the speed is normal, the propulsion is normal on this maiden flight.
Du troisième étage.
And there's the separation of the third stage. Done its job. There's the AVUM.
Premier allumage du quatrième étage.
And there's the first ignition of the AVUM. Our speed now, 7.7 kilometers. We've almost reached our maximum speed. This is the fourth stage, called the AVUM, which means Attitude and Vernier Upper Module. And when Davide gets back, he's going to tell us what that means exactly. But basically, a vernier referring to the precision required by the upper stage, because the AVUM is designed to deliver different payloads
Tous les paramètres du quatrième étage sont
into
normaux.
different orbits and to perform very fine satellite pointing before separating the satellites. The AVUM's main mission begins at the end of the solid propellant base, which you saw. It starts maneuvering to reach the targeted deployment orbit. Everything is fine on board. The DDO calling out repeatedly, trajectory normal, propulsion normal, everything nominal is the word here. The AVUM burning, you can see, carrying 626 kilos of propellant in her 4 tanks. Powered by a restartable engine, we're going to have several burns.